Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Leslie with the New Mexico Small Business Development Center, and I'm here with Ian Alden. I'm excited to learn about this topic today because it sounds really interesting, and Ian is great at picking up our questions throughout the entire webinar and presenting us really relevant information. He is a practicing attorney here in New Mexico. So don't be shy, type any of those questions into the Q&A, and I just kind of let him run with it. He does everything. And so I'm going to let him run with this today. I'm going to be sending over information through the chat on some helpful links for you. If you have any problems with that, let me know. But let's get right to it. Technology, smart, simple, tech-focused business strategies. Ian?
Thanks so much, Leslie, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm glad to be with you again for this one. Before I get started, I'm just going to go through a bit of housekeeping here. As you all know, the Delta variant of COVID-19 is running pretty much unchecked through a lot of the country right now. So it's important now more than ever to maintain a COVID-safe workplace. This is for everyone's benefit so that we can all keep the economy up and running. We're all having to do our part to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So check out some of the helpful resources in this slide here. There's all kinds of helpful regulation compliance info so that you can be doing your part to maintain a COVID-safe workplace. So some other notes here. Your microphones should be muted by default. If they come unmuted, please make sure to keep them muted. Make sure your zoom ratio is set to fit window. That's so that you can see everything on the slides. We're going to be using the Q&A function here in Zoom to take questions, and I'm going to be taking them throughout the presentation. So if you have a question, don't feel the need to hold it until the end. Just jump right in and ask it. I'll probably get to the end of whatever slide I'm on, and then I will happily stop and take your questions. I love it when these things are conversational, so feel free to ask any question you have. If you do decide to hold your question to the end, make sure that you write down your question and the slide number it relates to, just so that you know what your question was, and I know what slide to jump back to. You can see the slide number in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So some other great workshops that the SBDC has coming up. It's always worth taking a look at their website and seeing what's on offer, but just some of the next couple of days here, we've got increased word of mouth leads using the internet. Always good to have more, generate more interest in your business. We've got a bilingual session transitioning into the new normal. That's coming up on the 1st. Childcare starting steps and cash is king, cash management for your small business. There's tons of other workshops coming up, as well as, of course, SBDC's other services. There's no cost business counseling, loan application assistance, and a ton of great resources out there. So be sure to check out www.nmsbdc.org to get a sense of what those great resources are. Hope to see you with future webinars as well. Some quick disclosures. This is all presented for informational purposes only. This isn't unique business advice for any one situation. Obviously, I highly recommend that you sit down at the end of this and talk with your own professional advisors to help you map out some good strategies and systems that you can implement afterwards. I am going to be mentioning several very specific products here and product manufacturers, vendors, and whatnot. Just know that the New Mexico Small Business Development Center cannot and does not recommend or endorse any particular vendor, product, or service offering. I'm mentioning them by name in here because these tech systems don't exist in an ambiguous bubble. I can't really abstract them. And it's going to be really helpful for you, I think, if I refer to products that you probably already know and maybe even use. So just know that nothing in here is a recommendation or endorsement of any specific product that you might see listed here. So a quick background on me before we get started. I'm a business attorney and consultant here in Albuquerque. I work with clients on a number of business startup and growth strategies, which doesn't include a lot of IT work, though it does include a fair bit. But some background on me, I actually have a whole nother life before entering into the law. I have an associate's degree in computer science, and I worked in the IT field for over 10 years, helping to design these systems for small and mid-sized businesses. So that's where a lot of this advice is coming from. Some of it's legal and growth strategy, but a lot of it's just basic tech concepts that are going to help you to come up with systems and approaches that help you run and grow your business with as little headache as possible. And that's really the goal here. So with that all in mind, but it's important to understand, I throw out words like information technology, and I'm sure you've heard it all the time now. What is it? All IT really is. I mean, it's the combination of computer systems, hardware, software, and networks that are used to communicate, process, and store information. That's all it is. You're communicating, processing, and storing information. So think about that for a second. If that's all of these technology systems are supposed to do, your computers with the internet, your cell phones, your tablets, etc. If that's all it's supposed to do, let's try and think about some of the systems that we're actually using to accomplish those three goals: communicate, process, and store information. So we communicate information in any number of ways: phones, emails, faxes, messaging platforms, teleconference, video conference tools like the one we're using right now, websites. That's all what I would call front end stuff. That's the stuff that you personally directly engage with. Then there's all the back end stuff that communicates information. When you use a website, there's a host of back end systems that talk to one another to communicate what it is you're doing to the website and what the website wants to present to you. Information is flowing back and forth without you ever seeing it. But that's goal one, is to communicate information. Goal number two, process information. Once you have this information, think customer input, they fill out a web form. Think the information that's relayed to you on a phone call that you take down and note somewhere. Something you're actively hearing, maybe a fax or an email that you received. But once you have this information, what do you do with it? So there's processing of information. You've got your commerce software. Think customer order platforms. If you're taking down orders with some sort of custom software, there's that. There's customer relationship management software called CRM. Think Salesforce or other tools that let you take down potential customer information and find efficient ways to advertise and market to them. There's that. There's QuickBooks. There's all kinds of stuff that processes the information that you get and does something useful with it. Maybe it generates reports so that you can see, okay, these are all my leads. This is where they're coming from. This is what they have in common. Maybe there's a specific age range that your leads tend to get grouped into. So there's lots of processing of the information that you receive. And then, of course, there's storing information. There's on-site storage. There's cloud storage, whether it's an external hard drive, a network attached storage device, a server, cloud storage. There's all kinds of different ways that we store information, and we usually use more than one as a safety check, as a sort of redundancy. So with all of that in mind, this workshop is going to look at ways that you can really drill down and refine the systems that you're using and the approach that you're taking to building these systems, and agreeing to these systems and coming up with and implementing these systems so that it's simple and efficient and effective for you, and it's keeping up with all the necessities of your business now and in the future, because it has to support what you're doing now and you have to be able to grow with it. So that's what this workshop is really about. We're looking at all of these different purposes, things that you need computer systems for, and we're gonna, like I said, really drill down on how to go about this process of coming up with a good, efficient, effective system. So with that in mind, I'm gonna lay out a hypothetical office setup number one. And spoiler alert, this is not a great system. This isn't a great setup, but I want to run you through it to kind of highlight ways in which it's bad, because I'm sure a lot of you, with your own businesses, you've got tech systems in place that look a lot like this. And you're thinking to yourself, this is an unmanageable system. I don't even know what half of it does. And I really don't know, if I need to make a change, or if I'm going to try and grow the business, if I can even do it with this current system. So let's look at it. Greg here has an auto shop. He sells parts, he provides install and repair services. It's pretty straightforward business, and it's not doing anything too complicated, but he's got a physical location, and to that end, he's got a number of tech systems. He's got Comcast Xfinity Internet. They're one of the big two providers here in Albuquerque, the other being CenturyLink. There's obviously other vendors, some of which resell Comcast or CenturyLink, some of which provide dial-up services, and some of which they provide satellite internet services. But if we're talking through wire broadband internet, it's typically going to be Comcast, Xfinity, or CenturyLink. So he's got Comcast Internet, but he's also got CenturyLink phone service. He's using what's called POTS, plain old telephone service. Think before the days of complicated voice over internet phone service, or digital phone service. He's got the traditional bell wire analog telephones provided by CenturyLink that used to be Quest. I mean, it was Quest before it was CenturyLink, and so he's had them for, let's say, 10 years or more. He's got a mix of PC and Apple workstations. So depending on the employee, they've either got a PC running Windows, they've got an Apple machine. Some are just using their personal laptop. It's kind of a smorgasbord setup. He's got some wired internet that came with the building, but it only connects some of the rooms. Other folks in other rooms have to use the Wi-Fi connection. So some get wired internet, some are just forced onto the Wi-Fi. He has two generic Gmail addresses, meaning so-and-so at gmail.com, one for administrative purposes and one for customer support. So think Greg's Auto admin at Gmail, or Greg's Auto customer support at gmail.com. He's got on-site file storage using some network attached storage device that he bought from a computer store and just plugged it in and set it up. It's got some physical hard drives. There's no backup or redundancy or anything in it. He's got some personal use Microsoft Office software that he's been using on computers. Basically, someone who needs Office or whatnot, they get a personal license. He's got a website hosted on GoDaddy, a LinkedIn page, because he wanted some kind of social media presence. He's got Salesforce CRM software he's probably never used properly because it does way more than he needs or knows how to use. He's got QuickBooks for his bookkeeping, and he uses ADP for payroll. Again, none of these are endorsed vendors. This is just a typical or hypothetical office layout. But I wanted to draw your attention to a few problems right off the bat here. You'll notice that pretty much every service provider is different. There's no alignment between them. His internet and phones are provided by different companies. His email, it's like a personal email address. His office software is under a personal license. A lot of this isn't really tailored to a business. These are consumer grade products that Greg signed up for and then purposed for his business, which is fine theoretically if you're really comfortable with the limitations of the consumer software and you feel like you can have a good grasp of all the different things you've signed up for and you're not really worried about growth. If you think this is where I'm going to stop growing, I'm content where I am, my business doesn't need to get any bigger, this is doing it fine for me, this is where I'm going to cut it off, that's fine to a point, though you're still going to find that your approach becomes more and more outdated as time goes on, and it can cost you customers in a number of ways. And in order to really highlight the ways in which it's going to cost you customers, because that's why we're here, right? I mean, we want, at the end of the day, to make our tech systems work for us so that we can improve our customer outreach, retention, relationships. We make it an easier process for us and for the customers. That's the end goal of these tech systems. So, with a setup like this, it might work fine in the moment, but it's definitely not going to work fine in the future. So keep that in mind, because we're going to move on to some basic strategies here. And the strategy that I endorse more than pretty much any other is doing more with less. There's an acronym I learned back in ROTC many, many years ago. Keep it simple, stupid. The idea being you don't need to overcomplicate things. And one of the best ways that you can keep it simple in this context is to consolidate services and service providers where possible. The fewer interconnected, unrelated systems that all have to somehow work together, the fewer potential fail points if one of those systems goes down, more cost savings for you, because when you bundle these things, you tend to get better deals on them. You get better system integration because these things were meant to talk to each other in the first place. And it's just going to be a much easier time using and maintaining the system. Because for one thing, we're now going to be talking about business grade systems that aren't all that different from your consumer grade products in some ways. I mean, they're meant to be simple to use. A lot of them look exactly the same on the front end, but behind the scenes, they're all talking to each other in ways that are meant to help you and your business set up and maintain these systems. So, keep it simple doesn't mean foregoing things your business could actually use. It doesn't mean saying, okay, in the interest of simplicity, I'm not going to have a website, or I'm not going to have a social media presence, or I'm not going to have professional looking emails. That's not what this means at all. It really just means try to consolidate where possible. And that looks like this. This is another hypothetical office setup. This is Pamela. She runs an auto shop right next door to Greg. She's got, she set up her tech systems with her business in mind. And so she did this strategically. Before signing up for stuff, she actually sat down and mapped out what she really needed and wanted for her business to make it work effectively, efficiently, and simply. And so this is what she has. She's got Comcast internet, same as Greg, but she also has Comcast phone service that's bundled in. It's what's called a VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol phone service. Comcast sells it for small, mid-size, and large businesses alike. It's bundled with her internet. So she's got internet and phones from the same service provider. It's got desk phones, just like any other type of phone. It's got desk phones that are a bit smarter. The desk phones with this, they have, favorites. It's a digital touchscreen interface, so you can click a button and there's your favorites. You can click another button, there's your call history. You might know this from experience, but analog business phones are actually really complicated and a bit of a headache to use because you have to push 30 buttons to get anywhere. The new VoIP virtual desk phones, they tend to be a lot simpler, frankly. They're digital, but the interfaces are simpler. You touch fewer buttons to get where you need to go. So she's got that. Comcast internet, Comcast phone. She's got PC workstations for every employee. Every employee is on basically the same system, which means that her IT team, or if she contracts out with an outsourced IT provider, whatever, they don't have to know and understand how to maintain multiple systems. It's just PCs across the board. She's got a good wired network that connects every office in the building. They did this deliberately so that everyone can plug in. That makes it easier to access the internet, the files that are being stored. It makes it easier to access everything when you're wired in properly. She's got email addresses for each employee, and one for the business itself that use the business's domain name. So think Pamela at pamsautomotive.com, Jim at pamelasautomotive.com, accounting at pamelasautomotive.com. She's got real business email addresses, and one general for the business itself through Microsoft 365 for Business. It's very specific. That's a product that's meant for small businesses that bundles your email hosting. So all your email stuff is provided by Microsoft. It also includes cloud storage. She's got cloud storage through Microsoft. and it includes the Microsoft Office software licenses. So they're not using like the personal consumer grade licenses, they're using proper for business licenses, and it's all included in that one product. You see what I mean by consolidating under fewer providers? Because that way, you know, if Pam hires someone, she can go to her Microsoft portal and just add the employee there, and all of a sudden they automatically get a new email address, access to all the cloud storage. They get an automatic license for the Microsoft Office software to use for the business. They get all of that, and it's controlled at a single point, which means that instead of having to deal with 3 different systems to onboard this employee, Pam only has to deal with one. Same with Comcast. I mean, to add another phone to that service, she can do it from the web portal. Add user, she adds it, they get assigned an internal direct line phone number. Comcast mails a new desk phone if they need one. I mean, the point is, these are systems that are designed for businesses. Instead of going and signing up for the consumer grade software that's meant for just average users, if you sign up for the business stuff, these providers design these offerings to actually make it easy for you to onboard and offboard people. If you fire someone, like if Pam fires an employee, she can go into the Microsoft portal, remove their account, and she stops paying the charge for it. Easy to add, easy to remove. Similarly, she has a website that's hosted by Microsoft Azure, which is their web hosting service. It's actually like a bunch of cloud services, but she's got a website there, so it's managed under the same Microsoft account. She's got all kinds of social media pages, and I've named these 4 to highlight kind of the big 4 that are commonly used now by consumers and businesses increasingly. Facebook and Instagram pages aren't just for random people, personal use anymore. A lot of businesses establish and maintain good relationships with their customers and potential customers on social media. So she's got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I've got mixed feelings about LinkedIn, but the point is it's there and a lot of businesses use it. I've got a question in the Q&A. Will the link to recording and slides be sent out to attendees? And I want to say the answer to that is yes. Typically, attendees are given access to these. She's also got what's called a Google My Business profile and a Bing Places for Business profile. Bing is Microsoft's search engine. It's the rival to Google. I mention these specifically because a lot of people think if I have a website, that's my web presence. If I have social media, that's my web presence. But if you actually search for business on Google or Bing, on the right-hand side, you're going to see a whole separate section come out that lists the business name, its location, its hours, its phone number, and some other information that the business owner plugged in. That's actually a separate profile called, like I said, Google My Business or Bing Places for Business. So Pam went and set both of those up. It took maybe an hour to do, but now if someone searches for Pam's Automotive, her entire profile comes up on the right-hand side, which is a huge boon for her because it means customers know who to reach very quickly. They can find your address quickly without having to go to your website. So it's a thing. She's got a CRM, again, customer relationship management system through Microsoft, same account as everything else with Microsoft. So that way she can manage leads and whatnot. Potential customers, she can advertise and market to them based on their data, their demographics, etc. And then lastly, she's got QuickBooks for bookkeeping and accounting. She uses their live bookkeeper thing. She's got QuickBooks payroll service. So, she can keep the books and pay her employees in the same system. And those systems communicate with each other very effectively. So that way she doesn't have to do payroll here on one system and then manually record it in her bookkeeping system. It all talks to each other. That is what I'm talking about by consolidating and simplifying. She's got everything, virtually everything that you would need to run a successful business, small business today. I mean, there's other systems, obviously. This isn't an exclusive or exhaustive list, but the point is, she's done this in such a way that she's got all of the features that are designed for businesses, and she's got them under as few service providers or vendors as possible. Got nothing. I've got a budgetary question. How much do these cases cost? And that is a great question. And it's not one that I can answer fully, but I can give you a baseline understanding. And again, I'm not promoting specific vendors here. And in fact, the very next slide is going to go over a very similar case with entirely different vendors. So this isn't a setup that you only have to do through Microsoft or whatnot. I'm going to show you a complete alternative picture, but just to give you a sense of it, this internet right here, I set up a business with this not too long ago, internet and phones for about five employees, and we're talking high-end internet, like very fast because of their needs. We're talking great phones with one special for the receptionist, et cetera, great voicemail and features. And I think they're paying about $300 a month for that, give or take. They're set up with Apple workstations. The networking, the wired networking is a one-time cost. You pay the tech guy to go out and run the wires. Once it's done, it's done. You might pay a few $100 to the technician to run the wires. Cloud storage. The Microsoft accounts for users, they tend to run somewhere in the ballpark of $20 to $25 per month per user. So if you had 5 employees, you could be expecting to pay maybe $100 a month for all the Microsoft stuff, which includes the email hosting, cloud storage, and the Office software licenses. Your website, you might pay 20 to 30 bucks a month, maybe a little bit more for hosting. Google My Business and Bing Places for Business, social media, that's all free. You don't pay for that. Microsoft Dynamics, I really don't know what they charge anymore. It's included in some of these Office for Business licenses anyway, so that might be free. And then the QuickBooks bookkeeping and payroll service, I haven't looked at their pricing in a while, but it tends to run 30 to 60 bucks a month, if I'm remembering right. You just have to price it out. But the point is, taken together, you could be paying, and I know this isn't cheap in 30,000 foot cents, but you could be paying maybe $400 or $500 a month for all of your tech systems together to run the business, which it is an expense, but it is also an investment in the 21st century so that people can find your business. It looks professional. It looks like it's keeping up with the times. They're able to engage with it. You're able to engage with the customers effectively and professionally, and you're maximizing your marketing outreach capabilities. I gave a talk a week or so ago about, part of it was about marketing strategies. And bottom line, you can't market effectively in this day and age if you're not making ample and effective use of technology. So it's an expense. And I'll talk about budgeting a little bit later, but yeah. Let's, like I mentioned, I'm not here to hawk Microsoft services. So let's look at a completely different setup. Same thing, Angie runs an auto shop next to Pam. It's a very crowded street. She took kind of the same approach as Pam. She worked ahead of time to map out her systems so that she knew what she needed to do. And she got it up and running before she started business, which again, you can do this after you're up and running. It's just maybe you have a little bit of downtime while you get stuff installed. But the point is she set all this up with an eye towards business uses. And she's got a very different system that does functionally the same thing. She's got CenturyLink, fiber, and phone systems. She's got the good digital VoIP phone systems. So just like Comcast, she's got a desk phone that's digital, touchscreen, easy to navigate through the different menus and whatnot. She's got Google Chromebooks for each employee with docks at each workstation, so monitor, keyboard, mouse, etc., that the laptops plug into. Everything is wired for internet. She's got the email addresses for the business run through Google Workspace, cloud storage through Google Workspace, productivity software through Google. It's the Google Docs, Google Slides, etc. It's the Google equivalent of the Microsoft Office products. She hosts her website through Google Cloud. You see the integration here. She picked a vendor like a service provider and then maximized her use of the services that that vendor provides. She's got the social media pages. She uses it's a third-party CRM. Google doesn't provide their own CRM, but she used something called Zoho, and there's like 1,000 of these. but they integrate with Google Workspace. So, all the customer relationship stuff, all the lead generation, it all plays nice with her existing Google stuff. So if she wants to send an email through Zoho CRM, it routes through her Google email addresses. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to deal with 5 pop-ups and copying and pasting stuff. It all talks to each other. Similarly, she's using Wave Accounting, Bookkeeping, and Wave Payroll. This is kind of the lower cost model of the same thing we talked about in the last slide. The Google stuff tends to be a bit cheaper on average than the Microsoft stuff. CenturyLink tends to be a little bit cheaper than Comcast, though not substantially. Zoho CRM is free. Wave Accounting was free when it first started. I think it's still free or low cost. They've got Payroll, which is pretty low cost comparatively. So you see what I'm saying? We're not promoting specific vendors, but you can find vendors that provide these services and then you maximize your use of them. And that is one of the best strategies I can recommend, because really simplicity is key here. Fewer vendors means fewer headaches, fewer points of contact if stuff breaks. If your internet or your phones go down, you typically have the same person to call, which is a business liaison with Comcast or CenturyLink, someone who's like your account manager, basically. If you need to change your services, you can do it online or call that account manager. Again, lower costs come with bundled services. If you're bundling your phone and internet, it tends to be cheaper than if you buy them from separate vendors. And they integrate better with one another, which means they talk to each other behind the scenes, makes it a bit easier to use. Yeah, I already went over this example here, but you buy this account from Microsoft or Google and it gives you access to all these different services at the same time. So that's really handy. Consistency is key. If you're going to do something, commit to it. If you're going to wire your office, have the tech come out and just do the whole thing at once so that you don't have to have them back out, so that you don't have a hodgepodge of different networking systems that are meant to talk to one another that were installed years apart from one another. If you're going to adopt a new system, really adopt it wholesale, and don't adopt different systems for different employees. If you're picking up a Microsoft Office 365 system and one of your employees says, but I really like Google Docs, too bad. Get them on the same system, because it's going to be cheaper overall. And those systems are meant to talk to each other and work seamlessly. So you don't want one person becoming a friction point in your tech systems. And again, follow through is key. You have to commit to the process. If you don't commit, if you adopt a system and then you say, well, maybe I'm changing my mind, maybe I'll go with this other thing 3 months later, you're never going to get the full benefit of any system you adopt if you don't fully commit to the adoption and give it an actual chance to work. So that also means really engaging in good faith to learn and make use of the system. I've worked with business owners who they asked me to set up these systems for them, and then they just refuse to try and learn them at all. And if you're not willing to engage with the system, you're just not going to benefit from it. Another question. I think that's one for Leslie, so I'll just leave that for her. So part of this, and obviously a big part of this, is growing sustainably. The whole point of this is to let your business run in the now and also in the future. So, growth is important. And if your systems can't grow with you or be replaced, your tech systems are going to hold you back. They're going to hamper your growth, or worse, they're going to drive you backwards, because you're going to start losing customers if they're having a harder and harder time engaging with your business. One great example is just the email thing. If you don't have a professional email set up with easy access from your computer workstation, maybe even from your cell phone or your tablet or whatnot, if customers are finding that it's hard to reach you, they're just going to give up and they're going to go elsewhere. So these tech systems are important for the now, but also for the future, because as you grow, as you take on more employees, for example, you want to be able to add them to the system with the minimum of fuss. The systems I just walked you through are designed with that in mind. That's why you use business grade systems instead of consumer ones, even though they cost more. No one likes to pay more than the low cost of free, but if these business systems are designed with business needs in mind to let you grow and add employees, and they have business rich features like data security features, for example, that businesses need and consumers often don't, it's time to actually look at them and implement them in a coherent way. Good systems are going to be replaceable without a difficult transition or excessive downtime. If you outgrow your system, a good system will lend itself to being replaced pretty easily. But a great system will be scalable such that they can grow with you and you don't need to replace them. Like I said, if you can go and add employees as you need to in the web portal, that's scalable. You don't need to replace the system, you just grow the system as you yourself and your needs grow. So when designing these systems, keep growth in mind. So here's some examples here. Obviously, we covered, Microsoft and Google letting you add or remove users with 2 clicks of a button. Same with the phone services, Xfinity, CenturyLink, 8x8, Ring. There's tons of, I think that's supposed to be Ring Central. There's tons of VoIP providers out there. There's more than I can count, frankly, but all the good ones, the truly good ones, are going to let you add or remove people without much of a struggle. So do your homework on them, see what the process is. If you have to call someone and wait on hold for 2 hours to make any small change to your account, that's going to cost you time and opportunity. So similarly, when we think about file storage, obviously we've all run into storage full errors at some point in our lives. Good cloud storage providers are going to let your storage plan scale with you, and they do. The rule is just the more you store, the more you pay. So you want to look for good cloud storage plans that you can grow with sustainably, meaning they don't charge you some pirate ransom and overage fees. If you go over your 1 terabyte data limit, we're going to charge you $500. Don't go with those plans. Find the ones, and again, I list a few here, and there's tons more. But find the ones that will let you grow your storage quotas or capacities for reasonable costs as your needs increase. Same with web hosts. When you have a web host, they're going to charge you based on resource usage, which means storage. How big is your website? How much memory does it take to store? How many people are visiting your website? How much bandwidth is it using? And how complicated is your website to load, to render? How much CPU computing power is it using? The bigger and more complicated your site gets and the more people visit it, the more you're going to pay for hosting. So you want to make sure that your hosting plan is scalable. And I'll give you an example here. Our business, our law firm, our web host was not scalable. We just migrated to a new web host last week because we hit a hard limit with our host where people were going to our website and it was taking 20 seconds to load because the web host just tapped out. So we had to migrate to a whole nother provider, and it would have been so much nicer and easier if our existing provider could have just offered us a scalable plan where, okay, your website's growing, we will commit more of our systems to you. We have that capacity. So when you're mapping out these kinds of providers, keep the same thing in mind. Planning for contingencies is a big one, especially in the year 2021. Tech outages happen. We've experienced them in big and small ways, some that you notice, some that you don't. Even big name companies have rare, but they have tech outages. Amazon Web Services went down maybe a year ago, and it took a good chunk of the internet down with it for the better part of the day. It was kind of hilarious, actually, but even the big providers go down from time to time. Microsoft goes down from time to time. So you can't prevent outages 100% of the time, but what you can do is take steps in your planning to mitigate the impact, to reduce the impact of those tech outages. And there's a few ways that we can do that. Is there some way, I got a question here, is there some way to mask a Gmail so it looks like a professional email, especially when just starting out and costs hold people back? What might be some common barriers and some workarounds for startups and businesses as they scale for growth? Great question. There's not a way to mask a personal Gmail, but I want to emphasize how there are ways to make this process affordable and encourage you to reach out to a good tech consultant or someone. But really, a Google account, for example, I've helped people start up their businesses. They paid $20 for a year of their domain name. They got a year of mybusiness.com for 20 bucks. Then they signed up for Google Suite, which is now Google Workspace for Business, for $5 a month. I don't know if that's still the exact pricing, but it was $5 a month. They didn't have to prepay anything. So for $25, they got their domain name, their business domain name, and they got an email address from Google that used their domain name. So it was a professional business grade email for a $20 one-time investment for the first year and then $5 for the first month. So I know this can all seem daunting and expensive, but I also want to emphasize there are ways to do this affordably and for the costs to increase as you need them to, like as you need your business's tech needs to grow. Because, for example, if you're running your business from home, you don't need to pay for business grade internet or phone lines. You can get a VoIP phone line for $5 or $10 a month. Similarly, email addresses for cheap. So the point is, there's ways to do this in a cost-effective manner, but there's not a way to mask a consumer-grade email address. Next question: what about planning for certain decisions under the guise of penny wise, dollar foolish? I don't understand. I don't know that saying. What I can tell you, and I do cover this in a later slide, is there's a fine line between being economical and making sure that you're getting the best, making the best use of every dollar, and being thrifty to the point of harming your own business. So being economical is doing the thing I just outlined, getting a cheap domain name and getting a low-end business email address for 25 bucks. That's economical. Being thrifty to the point of harming your business is having pamsautomotive@gmail.com, using a consumer grade email address, because that looks unprofessional and it gives your average consumer pause if they look at your business and see that you don't even have a business email address. You're using a consumer grade Gmail address. That gives customers pause, and it does, believe it or not, cost you potential business. So I think that answers your question. Be economical, but don't be stingy to the point of harming your business. So as far as tech outages go, some strategies to mitigate it: have a reliable IT person who can help you identify the cause of tech outages. Some of them are things that won't get fixed until you fix them, like you need to go restart your modem or router. Some tech outages are stuff that's vendor specific and can only be fixed by that vendor, like Amazon Web Services is down and so is your website because you hosted it with them. That's for Amazon to fix, and so you don't actually have to do anything, but it helps to have some IT person on call who you can ask, hey, is this something we need to fix, or will this fix itself? Because if it's something you need to fix and you don't fix it, it never gets fixed. The next step for contingency planning is have a continuity plan in place to bypass some systems. And this is another reason why I love these VoIP phone services: Comcast, CenturyLink, RingCentral, 8x8, whoever you use. They almost all have smartphone apps now that will let you use your personal smartphone. You don't need a second phone anymore. Those days are gone. You can use your personal smartphone and the smartphone app so that you can connect to your business phone service with one button. And then you can make and receive calls using your business's phone number. So if I'm away from the office and I want to be able to take or make calls using my business phone number, I can do it with the smartphone app. It is the simplest thing in the world. So have continuity plans and build them into your tech systems as you make them. Another is just to have a social media page that you can make announcements on. If your website's down, if you had to close up shop early, have good ways to reach customers without them having to physically go to your business or call it. An email list, things like that. There's just ways to do this. So have contingency plans in place. And then finally, have redundancies in your system to avoid catastrophic failure. If all of your important data is stored on one hard drive, an external hard drive, and it either it dies, it's broken, if it's stolen, if it burns in a fire, you've lost everything, all your files. Once it's gone, you can't get it back. But if you have good backup systems, for example, some kind of network attached storage with built-in backup, that also backs up to the cloud, cloud backup storage, that is protection for you, so that if you lose your physical hard drive or your physical data store, it's already in the cloud. You can just pull it right back. No muss, no fuss. Maybe you lose a few hours of time, but bottom line, you haven't lost all of your files that are so vital for your business now. There's lots of different ways that you can do this here. There's redundant storage, there's file versioning. So ransomware is a big thing. You've all heard of the ransomware. Colonial Pipeline is a big one. Hospitals are common targets for ransomware. This virus it changes all of your files and locks them so that the only way to access them is to pay the ransom. If you have this thing called file versioning, which is basically one system backs up the file every time it changes, or maybe once an hour or a few times a day, whatever, you can just roll back to that previous version. You don't have to pay the ransom. So have these smart systems in place to back up your data. That's just basic contingency planning in the year 2021. And doesn't have to be expensive. You can do this kind of on the cheap, and there are ways to do it for as little as $10 a month, but highly, highly recommend it. Now, common questions I get: how can I mess this up? There are ways, and fun story, I have actually seen a laptop catch fire. It doesn't look quite like this, but it's the thing. How can I mess this up? It's easy to mess it up if you approach this thinking you're going to mess this up. The bottom line is making IT work for you. It's about being proactive. The worst setups are born of incremental fixes that aren't meant to work together as part of an integrated system. What does that mean? Incremental fixes that aren't meant to work together as part of an integrated system? It looks like this. This is a car with a window AC unit powered by a diesel generator strapped to the roof. Obviously, these are not things that were meant to work together. Someone made them work together, but they work together very begrudgingly and very poorly. So if you don't want your IT system to look like this, it requires some proactive planning to, like the examples I gave you. You have all these different systems that are well thought out and meant to accomplish something. They are streamlined and efficient, using as few vendors as possible. They talk to each other well, and they're designed for modern business needs. So again, the other worst IT setups are the ones that are designed by people who don't actually engage in the process of planning. You can hire a tech person to set up your system, and they can give you something that's truly great for some abstract business, but only you know your actual business needs. Only you know your use cases. I mean, your employees probably do too, but your IT person isn't going to know them unless you tell them and unless you engage in the process. So please believe me when I emphasize this point. What you personally contribute to the process is going to shape what you get out of it. If you just defer and delegate the process of coming up with these systems to someone else, and then you come back after they're all set up and say, okay, tell me what I've got, you're going to find that you're not happy with it in some way or another. So engage as a business owner with this, because if you engage, even if you don't get everything you want, you're at least going to understand what you're getting, and you're going to be a lot happier with it. It's going to be a lot easier for you to adopt and get used to. The other worst IT setups are the ones that are super convoluted and complicated, and no one knows how to use them, and they don't do the job you need them to, and they cost you time, money, and business opportunity. These are setups that, here's an example. And this is a real example. I helped someone who had this situation. Richard runs an accounting firm. He's got 5 employees. He's very worried about data security. So he hired a firm that all this firm does is it designs and sells one specific solution for businesses. They provided him with a whole new setup. And what they provided him was exactly what they sell. They sell these virtual machines that you have to remote into to use anything through the internet. So you remotely connect, and then it's like you are tunneling into this other computer and accessing it and all the software on it. Might sound simple, but it's really clunky and cumbersome. And I have never before sold or implemented the system for someone because it always ends up working more poorly than they want it to. It's hard to access. It requires really fast internet for both Richard's office and the virtual machine. Richard's office doesn't have it because of its location. Let's say he's out in the East Mountains. His internet is shoddy at best. No one's getting any work done. No one can access the accounting software. This system was an absolute failure for him. How did it go so wrong? He purchased the solution without identifying what his needs were first. So he bought a solution for a problem he didn't quite understand. He bought a solution from a vendor who only deals in that one solution. So they couldn't help him identify what his actual needs were. Because if they had tried, they would have realized Richard doesn't need our software. He doesn't need our solution. He needs something completely different. And Richard didn't understand what he was buying before he bought it. So by the time he realized it, it was too late. It had already been implemented and paid for. So don't do this. And in saying don't do this, and we're going to wrap up with this, let's talk about what you should actually do here, because this is obviously the takeaway point. What should you do here? Find someone who can help you design and build a system. It doesn't need to be an internal hire. You don't need a full-time tech employee, though if you've got a mid-sized business or larger, you absolutely want one. But there are tons of managed IT providers who specialize in this, in setting businesses up with tailored IT solutions. Going to emphasize, do your homework here. Some of these managed IT providers just use one-size-fits-all approaches that don't work for you. Others will work with you to customize something. So do your homework before hiring one. Map out your needs by mapping out your actual technology uses. Think and walk yourself through, what is the customer intake process like? What is my average employee's workday? What's my own daily routine? Look at every piece of technology you interact with during these scenarios, because that all plays into any redesign of your system. Identify your friction points. These are, these are complications with your existing systems that you wish worked better. I gave one example. If you hire an employee and you have to call your phone provider and talk to them for an hour or two in order to get a phone line added, and then get a phone mailed, and it takes 3 weeks to get the phone mailed, and then you get the phone, that's a friction point, or 2 or 3. I mean, those are delays that take up your time and cost you business opportunity while your employee is waiting on the phone. As another example, when your potential customers fill out a contact form on your website, let's say the form relays the info to you in an email, and then you have to spend 5 minutes every time moving that info from the email into your CRM system, so that then you can use the CRM system to market to them, to send them promotions, mailers, etc. That's several friction points, because that's stuff that, whereas a system could streamline all that and move the info from the web form right into the CRM system, because of the way your system is set up, that's friction points. That's stuff that you have to manually do that a system could be doing for you, saving you time. So think about this. When you're going throughout your day and you say, oh, I can't believe I have to do this every time I'm on a call. I wish I didn't have to do this, or I wish the system worked better. It's so slow. It's so notoriously slow. All of that stuff, those are friction points, and you want to identify as many of them as possible, because the more friction points you identify, the more you can end up fixing or solving or improving when you do the redesign. Now, try to predict within reason your potential growth over the next 2 to 3 years. You should be reassessing your tech systems every 2 to 3 years. I'm not saying you should be replacing them all. In fact, you might replace 1 or 2, you might replace none, you might replace them all. But the point is, you should be reassessing every 2 to 3 years to make sure that what you've got is the best you could have. And if there's something out there that's better, give it a look, see if the transition would be too complicated to be worthwhile. If not, maybe you transition. But for the moment, try and predict your growth over the next 2 to 3 years, because you want whatever system you adopt today to accommodate the growth within that time period. You want it to at least be scalable for the next 2 to 3 years. And if it's not, maybe you need to spring for something better now, even though you're not there yet, because otherwise you don't want to spend a lot of time and money implementing systems that you have to replace in 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. You don't want to go through all of that only to have to redo it. So try and predict your growth and map that out. Point 5, budget. And again, we talked about this. Good tech systems invariably cost you something. You can't get something for nothing, and there's a very big difference between being economical and undercutting your own business. These are all investments in yourself and in your business. And if you treat them as investments, then you start approaching this from a whole different mindset of, okay, this is an investment. I'm investing my money, so I want to maximize my return on my investment. Don't think of this as a cost or something that you begrudgingly have to pay out. I mean, no one likes paying it, but think of it as an opportunity to get something, and then figure out ways to maximize your return on your investment in your own business's tech systems. Very important there. I've got another question in the Q&A. Oh, thank you very much. Get input. Get input from your employees. Ask them what their friction points are. Ask them what their wish list is, because if you build the system collaboratively with your employees, they're probably not going to get everything they want. You're not going to want to spend that much money necessarily on a feature that is a nice to have, but isn't a must have. But at the same time, if they're heard in the process, they're going to have more buy-in, and it's going to really help with the transition to the new systems if those employees know that they were heard, and maybe they're getting something that they wanted out of it. So get some employee input, get some employee buy-in. It's really going to help. And then last but not least, make it happen. All the planning in the world does nothing for you if you don't actually pull the trigger and implement it. And again, all the planning in the world is obsolete 2 to 3 years after it's done. So if you do all of this planning and then you do nothing with it and you sit on it, it's going to be obsolete sooner rather than later. So once you do the planning and you've mapped out all your systems, you just got to do it. Brace for some growing pain, push the start button, make it happen. Oh, and I think this is the last one. Plan for evaluations and reevaluations. Once you've got the system set up, don't just sit on it forever, because, like I said, 2 to 3 years, you should be reevaluating. If you let it go 5 or 6 years, you're already well into obsolescence, and there's better, more efficient ways of doing things. So yeah, just plan ahead. Maybe set up some meetings with your tech advisor for the future to assess, maybe 90 days after, okay, how's it going? How can we improve this? What are we doing that maybe we need to tweak? Do we need to take a turn somewhere? I'm not talking a 90-degree turn. I'm talking like a 5-degree turn in either direction. But the point is, don't just set it up and then do nothing with it. Really be evaluating how it's working for you and figure out ways that you can improve it as you go, so that you're not just letting resentments of your own tech system build up. Because if you do that, if you set your system up and it's not working the way you want it, and then you do nothing, you're going to resent your own tech system and the money you're spending on it. I've got more questions in here. Thank you very much. What about grant funding? Are these income taxable? Okay, I've got a tax question, which is interesting, but not really on topic here. So I'll try and answer it at the end when I get to the end of the slides, but it's definitely not on topic for the tech.
And let me tell, Ian, let me jump in real quick. We are going to be sending you a copy of the slides. It is going to have the links. It's going to have the links on the upcoming webinars. And we do have a webinar PPP, Are You Tax Ready? PPP, idle and employee retention tax credits implications with Peggy McDonough. And that's coming up, well, Labor Day weekend. It's coming up next week. We also are going to send you the links that I have chatted through. I didn't realize that you guys weren't able to pick them up. So I'll make sure that the links are active when you get your follow-up email. It will have the copy of Ian's slides today, the presentation, the links to everything that I chatted over, the upcoming no-cost webinars, the link to our website where you found this, but I never can have it enough. And so we'll have that. We also have the YouTube link where we have a lot of the pre-recorded on-demand webinars for you to view at your leisure.
And I think we're just at time unless anyone has any other questions about the tech stuff. So really, I just want to thank everyone for attending the presentation. And yeah, I strongly encourage you to reach out to the SBDC, no cost business counseling and other assistance. They're a great resource and a great first stop when you're looking to plan and strategize for your business.
Yep. You guys have a great rest of your week. Thank you as always, Ian. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.